Got my eyes straight ahead, got my head in the game. With the red light on, I'm just waiting for the change. Keep my head down low.
Okay, so about 2 weeks ago, I was listening to this report, this interview on the radio, and it was someone who was involved with, well, he's actually a professional uh, at doing modeling, the kind of models that tell us that kind of predict the future mathematically. Says, oh, this is what's going to happen. So all these models were used during the pandemic. So you probably remember people like Anastasia Palaszczuk and Dan Andrews standing up and said, saying things like, "We've looked at the modeling. This is where it's predicted. This is what's going to happen. This is the reason why you need to be locked up in your home. This is the reason why you need to wear masks. This is the reason why, because we've looked at the modeling, and the modeling predicts that there's going to be all of these deaths, that all these things are going to happen, and yet the modeling says that if you wear masks, if you do this, if you get the jab, well, then we're making these predictions. This is what's going to happen. The problem is all this modeling was wrong. It's all been wrong. And I'm listening to this interview a couple of weeks ago, and this is a person who's actually involved with modeling. This is his job. This is what he does, and he was actually doing some of the modeling for COVID-19. And he's sitting there saying the modeling was wrong. And my head is being blown away because I'm sitting there going, why isn't this receiving a lot more coverage? Our politicians standing up and locking us down. Why? Why isn't this received more coverage? So let's have a look at it. And there's a few things coming our way, I believe. And I don't think it's going to be good. COVID-19 showed modeling is broken. This needs urgent fixing. We need to change the future of modeling to be more responsible and inclusive after seeing how failed COVID-19 models ruled the world and our lives during the pandemic. So I'm not going to read the whole lot, just some various things throughout here, and it gives 3 reasons why the models failed. So, as COVID-19 rapidly spread across the world, researchers and policymakers raced to create models predicting how the pandemic would unfold, including the potential loss of life. As I said, you can remember all of our premiers, our prime minister at the time, standing up and talking about these models that were predicting the future and how everything was going to unfold. We all remember it. For better or for worse, these models controlled our basic rights. They advised governments and populations. They shut borders and separated families for months on end. They determined the stringency of isolation requirements. They indicated if and where we should wear masks, and they decided when loved ones could reunite and finally hug. They profoundly shaped our everyday lives. Unfortunately, many of the models built to predict the pandemic were wrong. It's nice to know now. And not just by a bit, they were way off. As we start to live in a COVID normal world, it's time to take stock of how we model and how we can do it better. So this chap says this doctor, sorry, it's Dr. Asan Nabavi. So he says, my research shows the problems with many COVID-19 models were due to 3 major factors. Goes on to list. Factor 1, assumptions and values. Like other models, COVID-19 models were built on a specific set of assumptions about the nature of the virus, including its properties, rate of infection, and rate of mortality. Different models may make different assumptions and yield different predictions. Some of the assumptions made during modeling did not reflect the reality of the pandemic on the ground. For example, in many models, there was an assumption that the population was relatively immobile and had a consistent level of susceptibility to the virus. In another example of failure, the Doherty model, which guided Australia's COVID-19 response, overlooked the virus's impact on different ethnic communities by assuming equal vaccine distribution, understating the risk to certain communities. All models are built on assumptions, so this is not just a failing of those trying to represent COVID-19. However, it does question the values guiding any type of modeling and how modeling is then deployed. Factor two, maths and uncertainty. Models operate differently based on the characteristic of their engine. That is the maths behind them. For modeling COVID-19, various mathematical techniques were used to emulate how the virus spread and when the pandemic would peak, each with its own limitations and benefits. None of them were perfect. For example, the well-known SIR, susceptible, infected, recovered models largely failed in predicting the epidemic in the long term. Most models also failed to deal with uncertainty. Factor three, context. Models have and make their own context. A model is not only the representation of a situation, but also the product of many socio-political interactions. The problem with COVID-19 models was that they were generally detached from local knowledge and history, or being attached to a global narrative framing COVID-19 and potential responses. I think of, this local knowledge and history. There was several times in the Northern Territory when they had lockdowns. There was one 3-day lockdown that they had where if you had not received any vaccination, you were not allowed to go to work, but you were not even allowed to go outside in your backyard, even if you were the only person who lived in the house. If you were unvaccinated, you weren't allowed in your own backyard. You're in the Northern Territory, a place that is known for its heat. COVID-19, if you were outside in the heat and not locked up in some dank, dark house, you're very, very much less likely to get sick. And but as they're saying here, they weren't taking into account local knowledge, history, the local surroundings. And yet our politicians are quoting this modeling and using that to lock people down, even locking them down to not even be able to go in your own backyard. For crying out loud. The backyard of someone living in the Northern Territory, in a small town in the Northern Territory, is completely different from someone who lives in a little tiny unit in inner Sydney, inner Melbourne. But this is the problem when you rely on models, and that's all you're going to rely on. Anyway, get back to it. The problem with no, where is it? The question here is not that how models should be locally translated, but how they should be deliberatively, inclusively, and democratically negotiated with different mentalities. There was no democratic negotiation with ours here in Australia. We were just told this is what's going to happen. You get arrested if you don't go along with it. Responsible modeling should be our highest priority. First-hand experience of the pandemic clearly tells us that society needs to take the power of models seriously, particularly those models that are actively shaping policy decision. This is the whole problem, but they use these stupid models to shape policy decision. And politicians, they're all just about the next election. That's all they care about. They don't. Well, there's no actual good leadership in our nation. I don't think there hasn't been any good leadership in any of the upper echelon of society for a long time when it comes to our politicians. Uh, where is it? A model's assumptions, math, and context need to be understood as part of a wider conversation that takes place. COVID-19 models incorporated more than just the science. They were shaped by political agendas and public demands. Political agendas and public demands, and this is the problem. Political agenda was what was really shaping the models that we used, I believe. So that is what has caused a lot of problems that we've seen while the pandemic was going on, caused a lot of the lockdowns, unnecessarily being locked down in our own house, being forced, being placed under the thumb, being forced under control, to be under the control of whoever was out there trying to control us. We all know who they are realistically. The thing is, why this is even more important now. Let's talk about a couple of other articles that have just come up. Sky News is reporting how nurses have been sacked for refusing COVID jab, despite Queensland lifting vaccine mandate. This is only just happening. Bring it up so you can follow along, check out what's going on. So this article is, so experienced nurses in Queensland who were stood down after refusing to get the COVID-19 vaccine during the pandemic are now being sacked from their jobs. This is despite the state government lifting the vaccine mandate in September of last year, 2023. What a ridiculous situation is what this host has said. So we have this shortage of nurses. Sure. When I said before about bad leadership, it's, and I've said this before, it seems like some of our leadership are trying to destroy our society. They are purposely making decisions that are bad for our society as a whole. We need nurses. We need good, experienced nurses. So what do? Experienced nurses that had the courage not to take the jab. Okay. Everything's been rolled back. No more mandates. Don't have to get vaccinated anymore. But because they didn't do as they're told back then, forget your experience. We don't care. Uh, and we don't care that we have a shortage of nurses. We don't care that we need more medical staff, especially more experienced medical staff. No, you're out. You're out. What kind of leadership is that in Queensland? It feels like they are purposely trying to destroy our society, destroy our way of life. And why is that? Could it be that there is something on the horizon? And I feel like I'm just making, well, I don't know. I think this is what's coming up. And this is why, well, I just think they're doing this on purpose. They're doing these things on purpose. They lack, well, who was it that said it's just, these are the useful idiots. These are the useful idiots that make these decisions. And why is it? We've got another one coming. I believe we've got another one around the corner this year. Is this what's happening? Experts express serious concerns over new JN.1 COVID variant. The world is facing a new challenge in the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic with the emergence of JN.1, a variant that has quickly garnered the attention of health experts globally. Sounds very, very professional. This variant, arising from the Omicron lineage, marks a significant shift in the virus's behavior and spread. Having spread to around 41 countries, JN.1 first came to light with its detection in Luxembourg and has been rapidly expanding its footprint since then. The World Health Organization, you know we're in trouble, eh? Anyway, when they're getting involved again. The World Health Organization has acknowledged the variant's swift proliferation by categorizing it as a variant of interest. Health authorities are now on high alert as the WHO predicts a surge. They're predicting it because they're making it happen. Predicting a surge in respiratory illnesses attributed to JN.1 spread. According to the National Herald India, prominent voices in the medical community, including Dr. Eric Topol and Dr. Michael Osterholm, have expressed serious concerns about JN.1. They emphasize that this variant represents a significant development in the virus's evolution. It's an evolution. It's not that they created it in the first place, it's the evolution. And warn that the pandemic's trajectory is far from over. Uh, so these doctors further stress JN.1's unique characteristics, underscoring its unprecedented genetic change and potential to dominate future virus lineages. There you go. So that's what I think. They're telling us all this because obviously, as we've seen the last couple of years, they just, they don't really try to hide the truth. they well, they kind of try and hide the truth, but then they put it out there, drip feed us. This is what's happening. Just drip feed us a little bit, and then it's, hey, we've told you about it. We've warned you. I think this is what's coming. I think this is what we've got ahead for 2024. I don't think 24 is going to be a great year for the world as a whole. Uh, if you're a Christian, you know where your hope lies. But if you're not, I think this is where what we've got in store. Okay, we have. I think we've got another pandemic. It's on our way, on the way. It's just they're just going to roll out what they've already been done. We've already seen news stories coming out about how in the states mask mandates are being put back into effect. We've been talking about lockdowns again. It's always been on the news. They're just getting us ready, just drip feeding us all these little bits. And then they'll say, hey, modeling shows, forget all that other modeling. It was wrong, but we fixed the problem with the modeling. Our math is now on point, but the modeling shows you need to be locked down again. You need to do this. Well, we want to keep a track of people, so we're going to have to get rid of cash even more quickly, even quicker than we assumed. Let's get rid of the cash. Everything is contactless. Everything, will move into the CBDC, the central banking system that we've got set up. So no more cash. We need to be able to track everyone through cash. Don't worry about all these other apps. We'll just track you by your spending. Every time you're able to move your car, every time you do anything, we'll be able to track you. And it's all because, well, we want to keep a track of the JN.1 virus, the new COVID-1 virus. And our modeling shows that you need to do as you're told. Yep. This is where we're going. This is where I think we're going. Let me know what you think. Thank you for listening to the Slippery Slope Pandemic.
They just fuel a desire that will take me higher.